This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. This day in sports history. Welcome back to This Day in Sports History. I'm Steve White, your host. Appreciate you joining me. And, it's August 14th. On this day in 1936, if you have ever read the book or you've seen the movie The Boys in the Boat, then you're going to be familiar with what happened on this day at the Olympic Games. It was the final of the men's 8 rowing competition, which featured 8 rowers and a coxswain. The team representing the United States consisted of the collegiate rowing champs from the University of Washington. The team was made up of working-class college kids who came from logging families and dairy farms and commercial fishing families, guys who were affected quite severely by the Great Depression, beating West Coast teams from Cal and Stanford, and then outrowing the crew teams from the Ivy League to win the 1936 Intercollegiate Rowing Regatta. They were kids going up against the world's best rowing teams in the Olympics. The boys had won their way to the final on this day by winning their semifinal race on the 12th, but they came close to not even racing in that semifinal race. One of the 8, Don Hume, came down with a respiratory illness before the Olympics, and the coach, Al Ulbrichtson, replaced him, knowing that would probably throw off the rhythm of the boat. Now, the boys demanded that Hume be placed back in the boat or they would not row. Ulbrichtson acquiesced. When they lined up for the 2,000-meter final, the Washington boys knew it was going to be a tough race with the Germans, the Brits, the Italians, the Hungarians, all strong. With Adolf Hitler looking on, the gun fired and the boats were off. Now, the Washington boys were known to be slow starters, but that was exacerbated when they couldn't even hear the start of the race and the firing of the gun because of the screaming crowd at the start line. At the 500-meter mark, they were trailing every other boat and all appeared lost. Hume was out of it and not responding to coxswain Bobby Mock's orders to pick up the stroke rate. But then, Mock said as if a light switch was just flipped on. Hume became alert and he locked in, and the American boat surged. By the halfway point, they were making up ground, but they still had a lot to do.
The American crew is coming up very, very fast. They are coming very close to being in the lead now. I think that they have passed Germany. Germany and Italy are pushing hard, very close on this side, and I believe the United States is going into the lead. They'll soon be abreast of us with about 200 yards to go. The United States is definitely ahead of Great Britain, definitely ahead of Hungary, definitely ahead of Switzerland. They are now ahead of Italy. The American crew is in the lead now with Germany second, Italy third, Hungary fourth, and Great Britain fifth. And there is not one length difference between the first 5 crews. The American crew is in front. They're not leading by more than a deck length. It's very, very close. Hear them yell for Germany, but the United States is in front with 50 meters to go. 40 meters to go. They have half a boat length on Italy. 20 meters to go. 10 meters to go, and the United States wins with Italy second and Germany third, Great Britain fourth, and Hungary fifth. And not one boat length between the first 5 crews. And Don Hume, the very light stroke on the American crew, who has lost something like 12 or 15 pounds and is down till you can hardly see him, stroked that great crew from the Northwest to the outstanding victory of the Olympic Games and keeps the American record of winning the 8th now for 5 straight Olympiads complete. It was one of the most thrilling races I've ever seen in my life. And once more, the American crew, as they have done every time this year in every race, came steaming up from behind with a terrific rush, pulled into the lead with perhaps 100 meters to go, and slowly pulled their way ahead. There's some Americans down here having a fit. Everybody's looking.
At the award ceremony afterward, Hitler, in true weasel fashion, refused to shake the hands of the winners. The Washington crew's win was one of the signature moments of the 1936 Olympics. that had been mostly forgotten in the pages of history until Daniel James Brown's book, The Boys in the Boat, was published in 2013. On this same day in 36, there was another event of note taking place. It was the first ever gold medal Olympic basketball game. The battle for gold featured the U.S. versus Canada playing for the title of World's Best. The American team had been formed by the merger of two amateur teams. One group was from an oil refinery club team from Kansas. The other half were from the Universal Pictures team, as in the movie-making Universal Pictures. Now, back in the 30s, Universal used its team to market its movies, traveling up and down the West Coast. The team had some former collegiate stars from UCLA, and when they came to town, they would advertise a basketball exhibition game while carrying banners featuring upcoming cowboy movies or monster picks. The thinking was that if somebody could afford a ticket to a basketball game, well, they could probably afford a ticket to the movie too. And it worked. So now you know who was playing. How about where they were playing? Now, we all know that basketball was created as an indoor sport, right? Created by Dr. James Naismith as a way to keep his physical education classes entertained during the cold winter months. Well, the organizers wanted to try something a little bit different for the inaugural appearance of basketball at the Olympics. So, they decided to play the games outside. And there were actually a few different surfaces used throughout the tournament. There was a grass court and a dirt court, and that figured in on what happened in the gold medal game. The gold medal game was played on a dirt court in a drenching rain, and as you could figure, that made the court more like a mud pit than anything else. Kind of tough to bounce a basketball in the mud, right? Yeah, it's not like this game was going to be in the triple digits or anything if it had been warm and dry, but the weather was certainly the main reason that the final score turned out to be USA 19, Canada 8. Joe Fortenberry was the high scorer for the U.S. with 8 points. Naismith was actually on hand to proudly award the gold medals to the U.S. team. And when the next Olympics rolled around in 1948, because they had to take some years off due to World War II, Olympic organizers thought better of their outdoor experiment and moved the games indoors. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. Uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. On this day in 1977, Lanny Wadkins won his first and only major golf tournament. This was the PGA Championship being played that year at Pebble Beach, and there were a few surprises in this one. The first was that Lanny Wadkins was even in the mix. The 27-year-old Wake Forest graduate had been on the tour for a while, but he had not won a tour event since 1973. But he started off his final round in nice fashion, putting 2 eagles on the scorecard in his opening 9 holes. When Watkins dropped his wedge shot on 18 to 1.5 feet from the hole and then rolled in his birdie, he was sitting at 6 under and he was the leader in the clubhouse. But Gene Littler was in control of the tournament. He'd led since day 1 and he started this day 4 shots clear of the field and 6 shots in front of Watkins. But somebody loosened the lug nuts on Littler's round because his wheels fell off on his back 9. Littler started his final 9 holes with a 5-shot lead, and then he proceeded to bogey 5 of his next 6 holes. He sort of put the wheels back on in time to make pars on the final 3 holes to also finish at 6 under par, setting up a playoff between him and Wadkins. Now, this was the first time that a sudden death playoff was going to be used to decide the champion of the PGA Championship. In fact, this was the first time a sudden death playoff had ever been used in a major golf tournament. Previously, it had been a Monday 18-hole playoff affair. But nobody told Wadkins he may still have some golf to play on this day. He was kicking back halfway through a Budweiser when Littler rolled in his par on 18, thinking that he was set to hang out on the Pacific Coast for another night. But that quickly changed when he learned that he needed to get to the first tee. Shaking off a few jitters and a few hops, Wadkins was able to keep the tournament going with a gutsy 12-foot par putt at the first. Both birdied the second, and they headed to the third playoff hole. Apparently, the tournament organizers also did not expect a sudden death playoff because all of the gallery ropes had been removed from the first few holes. The galleries swarmed around the golfers as they lined up their shots in the fairway. Both golfers approached to the third hole with a little bit astray, and both wound up in the rough. Littler hit his a bit fat, left himself with a 20-foot par putt. Wadkins lifted his out of the tall stuff cleanly and landed inside 5 feet. When Littler missed his par putt, Wadkins calmly rolled his in for the win at the PGA Championship. And on this day in 1959, the U.S. got a new football league. When Texas millionaire Lamar Hunt stepped to the microphone for a press conference on this day, he was excited to announce the formation of the American Football League. Now, the AFL would start play in 1960 with teams in Dallas, Houston, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Denver, New York, and Los Angeles. Of course, you know the story by now that the AFL and the NFL would eventually merge a decade later and put both leagues under the same umbrella. That time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. Did you know that Charles Darwin is largely credited with the innovation of the modern office chair? You see, back in the 1840s, Chuck wanted to zip around his office a little quicker to look at specimens and observe different things set up at different locations in his office or his lab, so he put wheels on the bottom of a regular chair and got to zooming. It probably wasn't too long before he put wheels on another one and started to race a colleague down a hallway somewhere. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.